informal outline for a speech, things are much more intricate. Things go in certain places, have to do it a certain way. Why? Not just because it's what you do in class for a grade, because it's just designed so that when you get up to speak to an audience, it will assist you in the best way. So we're going to look today at more of what is called really a spatial format. There are other formats in the career textbook, chronological and things like that, cause and effect. However, we're going to look at this one model today. It's very, very important. But let's look, before we get started on the actual outline itself, when you put your outline together for this class, I want you to put at the top, general purpose. And if it's an informative speech, what's the two-word general purpose? Good, to inform. And then the specific purpose. There's three parts: to inform. We'll talk about who your audience might be in a few minutes. About. And then just your topic in general. So part 1, part 2, part 3. Let's come back to that specific purpose here in a few minutes. Let's think together real quick. What might be a good topic for us to talk about today if you were to inform an audience? Let's not choose yours, but what is a good topic? If you were informing a group of college students about. How about
advantages of sleeping?
Okay, let's talk about sleep. So who's our audience again?
College students.
Good, college students. Now remember, as we work through this, everything we're doing is only to inform. If we entertain in there a little bit, that's okay, right? But what do we want to avoid? Persuading our audience, correct? We do not want to advocate for anything. We are only a teacher here. So we're not advocating anything. So everything that falls under this, if you think, boy, that sounds persuasive, it sounds like I'm trying to convince them that sleep is good, instead of just showing them the facts on it. But then it becomes persuasive. So let's start. What is the very first part of a speech? What is that whole section called?
Introduction.
Good, introduction. And from your reading, there are sections of an introduction. What is the very first thing you do anytime you stand in front of an audience?
It's to introduce yourself.
Okay. No offense, Angel, but that's boring. That's boring. Your audience, this is incredible to think about, but your audience, when you stand in front of an audience, they will make a decision about whether they're going to listen to you in the first 5 or 6 seconds. Less than that. Less than that. So what do you think you need to do if you want them to listen to you?
Probably tell a story.
Okay, good. You got to get their attention, right? You're correct, Celine, with your example there. But you got to get their attention. You have to hit the ground running with something that gets their attention. You can't say, my name is Justin, and well, today I wanted to talk to you all about my topic. Oh man, if you're an audience member, you're checked out, right? This is going to be bad, and you know it. It already looks bad. So what I have to do is, how can I get their attention? What can I do that's relevant to the topic that will really get them on board to listening? And think, this is going to be really something worth listening to. Got a good example here. So Lynn, what was your example?
Tell a story.
Good. We can tell a story. That's one. We're going to list out quite a few, what I call attention getters here. One is to tell a story. We just went through a narrative, right? Well, in this story that is relevant to your topic, it needs to be a story that you work on. You can put the imagery language in there, and you work hard on it like you did on this other story, because it is an important part. You're going to hit the ground running with an effective story. Another good way to use story is to maybe tell about half of it, or to tell it to a point, maybe a climactic moment in the story, and then tell the rest of it later on in the conclusion as you wrap up. It's kind of as a final thought. So if I were talking about life as a sibling to somebody with Down syndrome, if I wanted to tell you a personal story about my brother or sister, let's say, who had Down syndrome, and I can get you to a certain point in the story where you're very interested in what happens next. And then I stop. I go on with the introduction, the body of the speech, summarizing the conclusion, and at the very end, you've been waiting to hear what? End of that story. And sometimes, let's face it, if for no other reason, you might listen to the whole thing. Why? Because you want to hear the end of that story. So you can really hook an audience right here. They can listen the whole time to hear the end of the story. Okay, story is a great way to get the audience's attention. There are a bunch. Give you some more ideas from your book or from your own experience.
A joke.
Ooh, using humor. Is that a good idea? What do y'all think?
What if they don't laugh?
Yeah, it is dangerous. It is a good idea, but it is dangerous, right? You have to be prepared.
So the joke means,
Yeah.
man, I don't get it.
It's really awkward if nobody laughs. You have to be prepared for no one to laugh. You do not want to get up and tell a joke or do something you think is humorous and expect laughter, and it doesn't happen because you're kind of left like, you have this look on your face. Oops, I thought that would be funny. This deer in the headlight. And that makes it even more awkward, right? You've been in the audience when someone has tried this, and it's awkward for you, let alone this person who's standing in front of everybody. Is it getting hot in here? So you try to do another joke to make up for that one, and that one bombs too. So how should you prepare to use this joke in front of an audience?
Use it on other people.
Yeah, I would use it. I would use it on other people. I would find a really good friend. I mean, your close friend who are really honest with you. Because you don't want to go to a friend and say, hey, buddy, I'm looking at telling this joke in front of 2,000 people next week. Here it is. What do you think? Help me out. You tell the joke, and they know it's bad, but they give you that courtesy laugh, and they say, go ahead and tell it, right? Because they want you to they can imagine in their mind you in front of 2,000 people sweating after you tell just a bad joke. So humor is good. However, practice it. Make sure it's going to be funny. Make sure it's not offensive to anybody in the audience. And then be prepared so that when no one laughs, you just move on like it didn't happen. So humor can be very effective. Okay, what else can we use?
Quotes.
Good, a quote. By who?
Anybody more famous than
Yes.
the audience?
Yeah, somebody, a notable person, right? And make sure it's, of course, relevant to the topic. All of this needs to be relevant to the topic. However, in a quote, I don't know why it is, for us, at least in our culture, if somebody famous says something, well, then that must be something I should build my whole life around, right? That's a philosophy there. So, quote is very powerful. Make sure you say this, give an attribution at it. Say this quote is Albert Einstein. For some reason in our country, it doesn't matter what Albert Einstein said, right? It's golden. So, a quote that is relevant. What else might we use? Text goes in the quiz.
Probably some, like, I lost the word. What is it? I'm sorry. What is it? Some stats?
Statistics, yeah,
Yeah,
stats.
statistics.
You're exactly right, stats. Statistics. This is very, very important. I do agree, statistics are can be very powerful. But here's the trick about statistics. How many do you think numbers you can hear in a row that are supposed to really get your attention and startle you before you start thinking, oh, I don't get that one, and I go on to the next, and I don't really understand that one, and go on. How many statistics in a row can you hear before you really stop paying attention? 3? Okay. I would say that is probably more than even the average person.
If you make a comparison, like a lot of the times when you give too many small comparisons, sometimes if you were to compare like the number of deaths per year from like handguns in the United States, it's like 11,000 something. In all the other countries, it's like in the 100s, like in the hundreds. So you can name off